Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And I'm Angela Yeager. You saw a clip at the top of the show for our first movie this week, which is The Shape of Water by Guillermo del Toro. And this is about a woman played by Sally Hawkins who works as a janitor in a lab in the early 1960s in Baltimore. And she develops a connection with a mysterious sea creature which has been brought into the lab to be studied. This is a wonderful cast. Michael Shannon, doing what he does best, plays the bad guy named Strickland. We got Octavia Spencer in this film, Michael Stolberg, who's excellent as the scientist, and Richard Jenkins in a wonderful performance, probably his best since his big breakout, much late in his career.
Yeah,
his
this is the
breakout 30 years into
30
his
years
career
in.
with The Visitor a few
Yeah.
years ago, and this is another wonderful performance by him. Now, we've already talked a little bit about some of these movies because we couldn't wait. We were so excited. It's that time of the year. And I know I liked this a lot more for you than
Yeah.
you did. This movie, for me, it was a 4-star movie. And I know it has some flaws. It's not a perfect 4-star movie. It's not, as Brian Knoll would call it, a strong 5-star movie.
Yeah.
But I just loved everything from the cinematography and the art direction are gorgeous. If it
Totally
doesn't
agree.
at least sweep in those categories, it would be horrible. But I also really enjoyed the performances, and I loved the romance and the nostalgia of the film. Not nostalgia in a bad way, but it just it made me feel the way films used to in a way, which it kind of alludes to that. With Sally Hawkins' character and Richard Jenkins, they watch old movies together. I felt transported when I was watching, and I was just thoroughly entertained, and I loved that aspect. So many of the movies this Oscar season are very realistic and neo-realistic or biographical, and I enjoyed that this was something a little bit more fantastical.
Well, yeah, I always love when a filmmaker makes a film movie about movie lovers, and she lives above a theater, and there's just, yeah, it's just, there's so many little
She has a
great
cool
things about
old
that.
apartment.
But the problem I had, and I did enjoy this film, it is a beautiful looking film, I just found the main central story the least exciting as opposed to the other ones. The first half of this movie, you get to meet so many amazing characters with these backstories and these lives outside of work that I thought were fascinating, and it just kept building layer upon layer upon layer, and it was great. And then we have the big jailbreak, which happens far too soon in the movie, really, because it all builds up to this, and then it's like, oh, and now we're put him in the bathtub, and then everyone else's side stories just fall away to the side, and it just relies on this relationship that I never really believed as much because I didn't feel the connection between them. I never really felt enchanted by this creature, and I thought she was fine, but I thought what I've always said is Octavia Spencer could have easily played that role, and I would have seen that movie as well. But the first half of this movie is absolutely crazy, incredible. It's totally worth seeing. It is just beautiful. My God, this is such a gorgeous film. The cinematographer is Dan Lauston, who had worked with Del Toro before in Crimson Peak, which is another beautiful movie. He also did John Wick 2, which had fantastic wet streets and amazing
He's
lights.
good with water, I'm guessing.
My gosh, yeah, it really does a great job of this. And Michael Shannon, I know you don't mean that he did a bad job, but he has played the villains before. But I always feel like he's a man that with a mission that has, he's convinced. I'm sure he doesn't see him as a villain. You know what I mean?
Well, no,
he's a
he
guy
even
who's supposed
has
to be
a
doing
scene
this.
where he says something to his boss, like, you'd give a guy a break if he served his
Right.
country and he's done everything he's
Yes.
supposed to be, and he
Great
just
scene.
makes a one mistake, and something bad because he's trying to say, hey, I've done a good job up to
Yeah.
now. I've done everything you've asked me to do, and now, and the guy's like, nope.
No.
You're only as good as what you're doing for me right now. Basically, he's saying there's no loyalty, and that's when he becomes really enraged. So, I mean, he does give him like a villain with a purpose. I mean, he's obviously still the villain in a movie about outcasts and outsiders who are all really the heroes of the movie, and that's what I loved about it. And I don't agree that they didn't have a connection. I thought she did develop a connection with the creature, and I did feel
She
like
fed him a couple of eggs. They played a Benny Goodman. He swirled around, and that was it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, but that was about it. This is the inside joke. People who already see the movie. But yeah, I just was. Or was
It's
it the other
definitely
way?
one that I
All right.
feel like I really highly recommend people see on the big screen,
Oh,
at the
yes.
theater, because you really want to be immersed in the experience, both, the visuals as well as the sound around you, the music in the movie and the whole sound of the film is, very immersive. So I
But
feel like that's very important.
so, like I said, with the scientist having his background, and then you have Richard Jenkins, who is going off into this restaurant and ordering pie, which I really thought was beautiful.
And I think those were all good establishing things,
I
but that's not what the
like
movie's not
that.
about. All
But I
of
found those
people.
so
As you're always
fascinating.
reminding me, this is like me saying a Brian here. It's not about those people, Angela. The stars of the movie are about. It's about Sally Hawkins.
But I
and
found
her
them more
journey.
interesting, and I found those stories what was
You
really
didn't
kind of
find
cool,
her
and they just fell
character-
away
Her
so
character
quick.
interesting. I thought she was interesting.
I've seen a
Mute?
a mute before, done before better.
Well, we see people and all sorts of kinds. Yeah.
It just didn't.
It didn't do as much
just
for
didn't
you.
do- I just didn't see that connection as much, mostly because the sea creature doesn't have any kind of communication or any kind of. Honestly, there were times where she's being very loving and maybe he finally said egg or something or magic at the end. I don't remember what it was, but he never really had any where he kind of any connection or wanting to be with her or doing anything except
till
for
the
actions
very-
of what
yeah,
what the story
his actions
needed.
spoke louder than that. I do think.
But his actions only were needed
But
because
I
they
think
had
that's
to do
what
that
was
for the
interesting
story.
about it. I do think there was an element of it where he was just a creature. And he wasn't completely human. He wasn't as emotive as an E.T. type character, for instance. There's a great scene where she's at the table and she's wanting to express her feelings. And she goes into this whole fantasy sequence where she has a voice and she's singing.
She has a fantasy sequence.
Yeah, but she looks back at him and he's just peeling his egg. And
Exactly.
he's totally uninterested.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's sometimes what it's like to
But
be
it
with
just seems to
someone.
me he just has this expression of this.
In
on
other
his
words, he's
face.
just a normal guy.
But yeah, I know. But it was just like it was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all he did. He had no other sort of expression. It was just a fish face, and that was it. With
Well, I
E.T.,
disagree.
you connected through the eyes. This guy didn't have
I think
that
it's his
as
best
much.
film since 2006, Pan's Labyrinth, which of course was one of my
Well, your
favorite films of the year.
yeah.
And this one is maybe not as strong. It's not as strong as Pan's Labyrinth, but I
Honestly, Devil's
liked it
Backbone
very
is
much.
probably his best film.
Okay, so we'll move on. But you're giving it what, three?
3.5 stars.
3.5. Okay, so very strong still.
Still, yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next film, which is Lady Bird, and we have a clip. Hey, you saw a clip for Lady Bird. This is Greta Gerwig's directorial effort starring Saoirse Ronan as the title character of Lady Bird, a teenager who is coming of age in the early 2000s, way back then, and battling her strong-willed mother, boys, troubles with friends, all the usual things that you find happening in high school. And this movie, of course, is getting a lot of acclaim. Greta Gerwig is best known as an actress, and this movie is partially, very, very loosely based on her own coming of age in Sacramento, California, around this same period, although she says it's not autobiographical. Laurie Metcalf, in an amazing performance, plays her mother, and I do believe she's the best thing in the film. I think that she just gives one of the best performances we've seen on screen all year. There are several scenes that she has where I teared up. And, in part because it's a hard part to play. What I was saying to someone is it's really hard to play a character who on one hand can be very unlikable. She's a mother who really isn't good at showing her love in obvious ways to her daughter, telling her she loves her, but you can tell she loves her. She's sometimes really harsh. There's one scene in particular where the Lady Bird is trying on dresses for the dance, and she tries on this one she loves, and she lights up with delight, and her mother just looks at her kind of with this withering look and says, it's a little pink, don't you think? And just very critical. On the other hand, though, she also pushes her daughter and wants the best for her, and you could tell she really, really loves her, and I like that. And it's got a wonderful supporting cast. Tracy Letts as the father, Lucas Hedges, who we've become fans of, who is also in a movie we're going to review a little later, Three Billboards, but made such a big impact in Manchester by the Sea. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I am not, however, giving it 4 stars like apparently every critic in the country. And I don't know if it's partially expectations when you hear things about something being the best coming of age story ever made, and it's a genre I'm a big fan of, as you know, and I've seen so many others I think are just as good, if not better. I can't say there's anything it really did wrong per se, but I enjoyed it all the way through, but it didn't move me emotionally as much as I thought it would. I mean, there were a few scenes with Laurie Metcalf where I thought, okay, here we go. But then it didn't quite get to me as much as I
never
expected.
really rooted for her. I just kind of let kind of happen, with what she's doing and how she was doing, because
the
it
Lady
didn't
Bird
matter.
character.
Yeah, because it never felt like she ever took any kind of instruction. She was kind of on her journey. She's a very independent young lady. That's a great thing, but it just felt like there wasn't anything you kind of rooted for, and it was like, well, do you really want her to go into college so that way it puts her family further into debt, and they have to refinance the house? Yay, is that a good ending? Is that a happy ending? I don't know. She should be going to Davis, just down the street. It'd save everybody a lot of headache, but she wouldn't be far from home. I always get tired of the kids. I was raised in Salem. I still live in Salem, so I never understood the people that want to get them so far out.
Well, and it's
including
either
Springsteen.
like sort of like she has to be in New York or California. There's no other places on the planet, right? So I get tired of that kind of.
It pays off for Greta Gerwig though in real life. I mean, she went
Well,
to New York and
obviously
look
she
what
went to
happened
New
for
York
her.
and
But
that happened to her, but we don't know that's going to happen for everyone. I do like the way it also deals with faith. I will say that's interesting. When I found out originally before I saw it that she went to Catholic school, I thought, oh, is this going to be another movie that makes fun of religion or girl? And it's really actually a pretty. No, you're okay. It's really kind of a very interesting portrayal of that. Obviously, she's not very religious, and it's not like the movie is about her converting or anything, but it is about how, in a way, especially some of the mentors she had at the Catholic school, that they helped her find her grounding, and I liked that.
yeah, yeah, you just didn't. There was a big, huge, buzz going about this film. I always try to ignore that. I sat down, I watched the movie. People in the theater, really enjoyed it. It's a very funny film. I wasn't as charmed as I would have liked to have been. Not that the movie has to be charming, but I always find Greta Gerwig, just recently very charming, and I do like Saoirse Ronan certainly here. Laurie Metcalf really is the standout. I did like the dad, and
I liked him too. Yeah.
she had to wear both pants as the parent, and I think that dad was the nice guy. He was the likable guy, and so she had to be the disciplinarian as well, and so that was kind of a little tougher. So I always kind of defend her a little bit because
Yeah.
she had to be the grown up underneath the roof,
Right.
and she
He's
was the
the
one who
nice
put things
guy
down.
parent, and that
She did
often
go too
happens.
far here and there when there was a graduation. You walked across the stage kind of funny, and I was like, "Mom, shut up! Just stop talking, stop talking." So
Right,
I
yeah.
did like that, and she didn't have. There was no major life growth moment where they have some hallmark moment. I did like that. It was
Well, and I like that it showed she's kind of clueless. So all this stuff, she's very consumed with all these things happening to her, the boys
correct.
and all these
Well,
things.
sure, that's
And,
most
what's
teenagers.
going on in the background, 9/11, all these like huge world things. And she's sort of oblivious to all
Yeah.
of that. And I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
nice little
But
undercurrent
I
there.
could see this movie, I think it's more of a, and it's a well-directed movie and it looks very good. I loved the
Yeah.
look of it, but the writing to me is what really stood out. Little moments, the parents hiding away in the bathroom so they can have a moment to talk. I loved that scene where Laurie Metcalf and Tracy Letts, they're just talking in the bathroom because it's the only time they get any time alone. And, little things like that are what I remember about the film. So it's definitely 3.5 stars
Yeah,
for me.
sure. I'll agree. Okay, so let's move on to our next film. This is Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Let's take a look at the clip right here. Okay, so that clip you saw was for Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. This is filmed by Martin McDonald, who wrote and directed In Bruges as well. So if you're a big fan of In Bruges, there's a lot of you out there. This is a film to come running to. This is about a woman played by Frances McDormand whose daughter was killed, and so she puts up 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri that criticize the local police department headed by an amazing Woody Harrelson. There's going to be Oscar nominations all the way around for this cast. I think this is the best film of the year. I came out of this film just elated. Fantastic dialogue, just incredible pacing. It's got a lot of a language. We had to pare down some clips just to be able to show you guys, show you folks at home. This is the kind of film I love. This. It just kind of has no boundaries. It has great dialogue. There's plenty of 4-letter words in the film, and it just kind of goes there. There's a couple of scenes in the movie where I didn't quite agree with what the characters were doing, but I really enjoyed the journey that they were going on. And Sam Rockwell, who gets to play one of the deputies, is not the smartest, it's not the sharpest tool in the shed, and he is so unafraid to play fools, and he is just a big fool in this movie. And Frances McDormand just comes in and anchors this thing, and Woody Harrelson is so fantastic. We saw in the clip those two sitting and having a conversation that is fantastic, and I could watch that for 2 hours alone, especially when he tries to get some sympathy from her and she has none.
Right.
She does not care. Her daughter is dead. They have not caught the killers, and she wants justice, and she doesn't care who she has to kind of go through, including her son, played by Lucas Hudgens, who does a great job and actually criticizes her because he's wanting to grieve his
Get over
sister's
it, yeah.
loss, and this keeps bringing things up and digging things up. It's an amazing film. Run out and see it now.
It's not my favorite film of the year, but we've already talked about that. But
Yeah.
but I did thoroughly enjoy it. I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I really sort of like you felt with Shape of Water in the second half of the movie. The second half of this movie, particularly probably the last quarter, really kind of took some turns. The Sam Rockwell character is kind of the village idiot in the movie, and I enjoy Sam Rockwell and those characters. He plays them well.
Yeah.
But then he has a big turnaround, and not just morally and spiritually and all of that, but he also has a turnaround, and it seems to me at least a very quick turn intellectually. And I just had a hard time. I think sometimes when you go to the movies, you can tell when you're really buying into a movie. You have to suspend. They talked about suspending your disbelief. The way you couldn't in Shape of Water, I had a hard time here. The cast is amazing. Like you said, Sam Rockwell. You also have Peter Dinklage, the great John Hawkes, who we've loved since I think, what was the first film? Was it even before Me and You and Everyone We Know was the one where we first saw who is this guy?
Yeah.
We want to see more of him. We have, but not as much. He's a great actor. I mean, just everybody. It is really like a dream acting ensemble. And Clark Peters, for those of people out there that are fans of The Wire, one of my favorite TV actors, is in this movie. A small part, but very important. So he definitely knows what to do with his actors, and I did thoroughly enjoy it. And I always love seeing Frances McDormand. I could watch her. And if her and Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell wanted to be in every movie, I'd be okay with that.
That intellectual turn he takes in the bar, though, takes a long time for him to sit and figure it out. He really has to sit there and figure out that he wants to do something.
That. It's when something crucial happens in the movie, and it's like he kind of just turns on a dime, and I just didn't believe it. And I didn't like the ending, and I like a movie with a more satisfying ending. I didn't find the ending satisfying.
Yeah, I didn't mind that at all.
Anyway.
Okay, so that's might be the best film of the year in my opinion. So we'll move on to our next segment, which is our Oscar-nominated films. This actually was a nominated film from 1959 for Best Foreign Film, and it actually won, beating out Boy of Two Worlds, The Bridge, Great War, and Village by the River, movies we've all seen. The movie is Black Orpheus, directed by Marcel Camus, and this is the retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth during the carnival in Rio de Janeiro. Points for me.
Yes, very good.
And this is a beautiful and striking film, actually, that kind of has it tells an easy story. It has a frantic energy. There's constantly music going on. There's lots of colors on the screen. It just kind of moves and grooves to its own beat, and I really enjoyed that about the film. I'm not familiar with that story, so now I do know it, and it was been on my list forever. Note: 1959 was the year that Charlton Heston won Best Actor for Ben-Hur over Jack Lemmon for Some Like It Hot. Thoughts? No.
You want to debate that instead?
No, I looked at that and went, wait, what?
What?
No.
Same here. Oh, well. It's interesting. And, the thing about this film is it's a French director in Brazil with a mostly local cast. So the acting is uneven depending on who's acting. The main actress, Marpessa Dawn, who plays Eurydice, is wonderful. I thought she was very good. Breno Mello, who plays Orfeo, not as much. He has but they're both. But everybody in the movie is gorgeous. All the people are beautiful. All the costumes are beautiful. The music is infectious and wonderful. It won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival that year, so that's a big deal. Interestingly enough, as popular as the movie was in France, it was not popular in Brazil, which doesn't surprise me, because they thought it made it look like all people do in Brazil is dance and party, and that it's just a big party place, and they didn't really want to. It's sort of like reinforcing the worst stereotypes in a way, because it does sort of look like a nonstop party, which it might be during Carnival time in Rio. So.
Yeah, they should have the Olympics there and see what that does for them.
But the Orpheus story, I've been told multiple times. Jean Cocteau has that series, The Blood of a Poet, and then he goes on to do Orpheus, and that's on Criterion. I haven't seen the whole series, but it's been done, but never done quite like this. So I think that's really kind of neat. So, yeah, I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Oh yeah, a wonderful film.
Okay. Oh, it's me. Her Fresh Picks. Wow. I think we went too fast on some film. I don't know where we ended up there, but okay. So Her Fresh Picks, that's where I pick a recent movie, usually from the last year, that was critically acclaimed, that never made it to theaters in Salem, or we missed maybe the first time around. And this one is called Your Name by Makoto Shinkai. Sorry if I'm butchering that. And it's about two high schoolers, one in a small rural town and one in Tokyo, who switch places and find their fates intertwined. So it's a little bit like, I like what you said. What did you say? It was like
Inception meets Miyazaki. I don't think that's quite it.
Inception meets Miyazaki meets one of those Trading Places movies. Because you have the whole, any of those, Parent Trap.
Trading Places. When you say Trading Places, I'm thinking Eddie Murphy. I'm like, what? Huh? Oh, you mean Trading Places like 18 Again?
Yeah, any
Big.
of those movies. Big.
He didn't switch one with Big.
He didn't switch. He just got
Yeah, he
became
just got
small.
yeah. No, he became big. It's the name of the movie.
Yeah, but one of those where they switch with into someone else's
Yes,
body to
18
give.
again would be one. Yes.
Okay, those kinds of movies.
What was one Judge Reinhold was in?
Why am I saying Parent Trap? That's not right, is it? There's another one.
You
Lindsay.
are so confusing.
I'm
me
so
right
confused.
now.
There's one with Lindsay Lohan where she switches with. Come on, help me,
No.
Taylor. Do you know
No,
what it
that's
is?
where the daughters switch places. That's where the twins switch places.
What is it?
That's Parent Trap.
What?
Freaky Friday.
Freaky Friday. Thank
No,
you.
no, Freaky Friday is when she was with Jamie Lee Curtis, you mean?
Yes, they're
Oh, okay.
switching places. That's what I've been
Well, no.
talking about.
Parent Trap had switching places. Someone out there on the internet, please help me out. You
Okay,
know
but
that
I was
people are
thinking
swapping
of Freaky
places now,
Friday,
too.
and Taylor, our wonderful volunteer, knew what I was talking about. Thank you. She's a little closer to age than we are.
Stick to the movie.
It has a little bit of that because it's a girl and a guy, and they switch places, and they have very different experiences.
Yes.
And she longs to be out of her small town and its boring existence. So that's sort of the first half of the movie is them just switching places and finding things weird. She's in a boy's body, so there's lots of things to discover
all
there.
sorts of weird places.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
And then
The movie does not shy away from that either.
No, it doesn't. It's definitely not a kids anime film. But then the second half it totally shifts tone, which I thought was very interesting. And we were all sitting there watching it. I think you, me, and Daniel, and going, "What is going on?" Because it really shifts tone and becomes sort of this apocalyptic sci-fi head trip, basically. Like we had no idea what was going on, and that was very interesting. And then it sort of ends more as a romance. So there's multiple genres getting kind of jumbled up in here, and I thought it was a really interesting movie.
You know, you remember the movie? Oh God, now we're gonna go into another movie. The Soderbergh film with drugs.
Traffic?
And how they went to different places.
You
and
just
everyone
brought
had
in
different
traffic into
Yeah,
this?
but the
Okay.
cinematography was different. Sometimes it was a little hard to tell what was kind of going on because I didn't know if it was the actual boy doing things or if it was the girl in the boy's body doing things.
You think
A
they
couple
could have
times it was
changed the look a
confusing to
little
me.
bit to help
Yeah,
us?
just to kind of help us, give us
visual
little visual cues.
I could see
because
that.
I didn't get it right off the bat. The first thing that he does when he wakes up in her body was discover the differences. And I was like, what the heck is going on in here? I don't always read what
And
the movie's
and
about.
her
I just
little
put the movie
sister
in and
runs in
start
the room and is like,
watching.
"You sure are touching yourself a lot," or "You sure are
Yeah.
fixated on your breasts," or
Yeah,
something like
something like
that.
that.
And, yeah.
But from and then
Although that was very
then
funny.
there's some music in the movie that's the Japanese Celine Dion pop music.
It's terrible.
It's awful. But aside from that, it does have a very interesting story, and it does have that turn in it, which I didn't mind too much. But we should have had some hints maybe a little early. It's not a perfect film, but it is a very ambitious film.
I was
It's a very
surprised.
smart film, and I really did enjoy it.
It was so
wasn't a
critically
4-star for me.
acclaimed. I was a little surprised, especially because of the bad music. Now, however, there's gonna be an American Me remake. Big surprise.
Because Ghost in the Shell was so good.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be live action, and so we have that to look forward to. I don't know. Maybe it could be better. They could, but I don't know. It seems like a lot of the things that you can do with anime in here, especially some of the sci-fi stuff at the end, I don't think would work as well. But you never know. So, anyway.
So you don't think they can do that with CG?
Well, of course they can, but I don't know if it'd be as interesting. Okay, so to wrap up, got my cards all askew. Shape of Water, I gave 4 stars. Brian gives it 3.5.
3.5.
Lady Bird, we both agreed on, was 3.5. Solid movie.
Yep.
3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Brian thinks is the best film of the year. For me, it doesn't quite hit that bar, but still, I can highly recommend it. Black Orpheus was our what segment was that? Oscar nominees, and a fresh pick was Your Name. As always, we'd like to thank our wonderful crew and our amazing sponsors for supporting us. You can watch us on our website at realfilmsnobs.com. You can listen to us on KMUZ. You can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can also watch us on Silverton Scan TV and Corvallis Access Media. You can follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Did I forget anything?
Oh my gosh.
I think I got it. Okay. As always, have a great day and great movies. Thank you.